2-1 victory for France over Brazil. Carlo Ancelotti's side. You see some of the stats here. It was pretty level as far as kind of the opportunities for both sides. A lot more shots there you see from Brazil. Obviously, that goes down to where they had 10. They were down a man. France was for that most of that second half. To break down the Brazilian side of this, we bring in our Brazilian football correspondent, my man Mbizo Mzamane. Mbizo, thanks for joining us. I want to get your initial thoughts on this Brazilian performance. Obviously, they were kind of behind the eight ball without some of their starters on that back line, and they took advantage, got a goal back, but they lose 2-1. What were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are just we just look so disjointed going forward. I just feel like technically, physically, an incredibly apt squad, amazing athletes, but I just feel like these players lack tactical acumen, and I felt they were so inferior to France in terms of where to be on the field, the decision making, how they recover the ball and what they do with it after. They were slow in transition. I did not like the lack of effort from Vinicius Jr., who kept attempting to do dribbles, which we know that's a part of who he is. But if they're not working, you have to work your behind off. Get back behind the ball and try to win it back. I just feel like, many of these players are not high IQ players. And I think that fact is hidden when they're at their football clubs and play with a slew of players who are intelligent, who are hardworking. I think some of those deficiencies are hidden. But when they're at Brazil all together, in particular that attack, it's so apparent that they're disjointed and that they don't quite have the decision-making skills or the tactical acumen to break down teams. I think Brazil's best bet against teams that are either equivalent or superior is to attack on the counter, which is odd for us to say about Brazil, who's generally the most creative in history. So it's a very frustrating time to be a Brazilian football fan.
That was a very, very, I would say, straight-up assessment of this Brazilian squad. Carlo Ancelotti is in charge of this team, and he is known for getting the best out of the players he has at his disposal, building teams around what he has. How have you seen these building blocks form over the last few months, and how do you see it ending with this World Cup?
There are a few positives that I've seen from Ancelotti's tenure. The first of which is I have seen an increased organizational acumen in the back line. Defensively, Brazil is actually recovering the ball very well. They're pressing quite well. They look happy, which I think is important as well in the South American context in general. We want to see players happy and joyful because we believe that will also be equivalent to decent football. But I think what Ancelotti is struggling with is, again, these high intellectual players, quality midfielders who can play the ball under pressure, who make good decisions when the game is back and forth and up and down. Can they slow it down? Can they be a bit of a metronome as opposed to running back and forth and being just an athlete? And I think the lack of these types of players is really hindering his capacity to form some kind of attacking cohesion. So look, I think, again, we're going to have to rely on the hard work of the defense, the closing down, the periodic magic that pulls off from Vinicius Jr. But really, this is not the Brazil that we know and love. And it's really very unrecognizable from the culture of the game in this continent.
So that being said, how far is this team away from being one of the top teams in the world? Do they have the squad to take a step forward with these current crop of players?
I think the fact that, France was still able to get a goal, 10 men down, that despite that, France still looked like they were firmly in the game. I think these are demonstrations of the fact that Brazil is way off the top. They're not a poor team by any means, of course, but they're a team that's very average. I'd say that's the word I'd use to describe this modern Brazil. Extremely average, and unfortunately, average is not going to beat teams like France, teams like Spain, honestly, teams like Holland, Germany, who I think are a tier below the ones I mentioned initially, Spain, France. They're just Portugal. They're not going to be able to compete with these teams. I don't even think that they have the capacity to compete with the former world champions, or the reigning world champions, rather, Argentina. They just simply are completely off the pace. Because again, even when the football doesn't work, a team like Argentina works extremely hard to be unified, to win the ball back, and to just get the job done. Brazil doesn't seem to have that gene either. They don't do well technically, and they're not doing well in terms of the work rate, the heart, the emotion. So they just lack in almost every aspect of the game. And to compete against the best, you can't have, that many deficiencies.
Mbizo, given all these factors, do you think Carlo Ancelotti is any closer to selecting his final 11 or having that first 11 in mind?
I think he does have a final 11, more or less. I think there will be some moving pieces that perhaps he still tries to put together, the pieces of the puzzle. But I think, to be honest, probably minus the center backs, that we were pretty close today to what will be the starting lineup, particularly across the front line. I think, again, there will be some moving pieces, principally because of the absence of Rodrigo. But the midfield, you can't expect, of course, Casemiro to be in there. His partner is still up for debate, probably Bruno Guimaraes. But we're quite close to the starting lineup, I believe, that Ancelotti will use. And very frankly, it makes sense. This is the time to experiment anymore. You really need to start having it down, and I think he does.
That is our Brazilian football correspondent, Mbizo Mzamane. Mbizo, thanks for joining us, my man.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, let's keep the conversation going on the France side, Aaron. It was funny. We were talking about it before the show, how they're not the World Cup favorites, according to the bookies, which is interesting. Spain and England ahead of them. But if you look at this roster, at least in the final third of the pitch, you have to argue that they're probably one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. What did you make of their team today and all the depth that they have going forward into this World Cup?
I think it was a perfect example of what this France team is. They're absolutely lethal at the top end of the pitch. When you look at this front four, it's ridiculous. Mbappe, Ekitike, Olise, Dembele. It was interesting to me to see Mbappe playing on that left wing role where he usually seems to be most comfortable. Ekitike playing through the middle. But where you would, if you're going to pick out a spot that is weak for this France team, you move back. It would be in the back and probably through the center of the back line. There was no William Saliba today, but whoever will be beside him, there is a question mark for me. Upamecano, Konate, they are fantastic footballers, but they are prone to a lapse in concentration and prone to a mistake, a clumsy challenge like Upamecano today. So that would be the biggest worry for me, is through the center, who is partnering William Saliba. Yeah,
that's a fair point. We've seen Konate's struggles now are well documented in his struggles with Liverpool, and you kind of saw some of those moments again, uneasy moments for him at the back line in this match against Brazil. But when we keep talking about this attack, because, that's where they're going to make their money. That's where they're going to win the games, if they're going to have opportunities. And Kylian Mbappe, again, coming through. After all the injury and all the talk, that knee seemed perfectly fine in this match.
He looked like, if you're going to put a percentage of his health, it looked like 98, 99. It didn't look anything close to what we've been hearing. Yeah. And he showed his quality today, how dangerous he can be in just a split second. He can open a team up. And we talk about this attacking unit, the depth is absolutely absurd. Yeah. It really makes no sense. We have a Cherokee coming off the bench, a Thuram coming off the bench.
Cherokee's not someone you expect to be a huge part of this team. And Mbappe, especially when he has all those players around him, he's going to smash this record real soon. He's just one behind Olivier Giroud for all-time top goal scorers for the French national team.
Absolutely.
And that's saying something with all the players that they've had over the years. Where does he rank among the greats of French football, knowing that he still has so much to go in his career?
Yeah, I had to think pretty deeply about this. So if I'm going to go French greats, in no particular order, Zinedine Zidane has to be there. Yeah. Thierry Henry has to be there. Michel Platini has to be there. And then when you think about the GOATs, Mbappe's name comes right up after that. Patrick Viera is probably in that top 5. There are some other players you could throw into the top 5, but no one's kicking Mbappe out of that top 5. He has a shout to be in the top 3. And if we keep going, that conversation is he top 2? He's top 2 and he might not be number 2.
And it might be even, like I said, and he has the advantage of having these absolutely incredible players around him. Yes. With an Olise.
And time.
And time, of course, that also helps. But like you mentioned, a Doué, a Cherokee, this attack is just so... They're so stacked and have so many opportunities. They're going to give him chances for goals. And I think something else that might motivate this team going into the World Cup, I want to see what you think about it, but Didier Deschamps, this is going to be his last tournament as the manager for France. And could that be maybe another motivating factor? Not that these players really need a ton of motivating factors going into a World Cup, but that could be something that sparks this team a little bit more and gets them to play a little bit harder.
Small margins, man. It's all about those small margins, and when you know that a manager, this is going to be his last hurrah, it gives you like a little bit extra oomph to get it over the line. This is a French team that needs no motivation. They are players that are incredibly professional, but tiny little margins, they really do matter.